news tonight. We'll have episode 15 of The Awakening. We're going to give you a realistic perspective about freedom or a false sense of security. It's going to be your choice. And right now, we'll give you a little preview of the upcoming shows we're going to have on AI. But in saying that, if you want something sugar-coated, I'll let you know right now, go buy a donut. Because things have gotten a little more urgent than some may think. There will be no resolutions this year, but there will be a massive awakening, which will save the human race. And you know, we are broadcasting from the Merrimack Valley, with a shot heard around the world this way. And the way men would be ruled and not be ruled. Tonight, we're going to emphasize a lawsuit from 1803, Marbury versus Madison, or said any laws passed that violate the U.S. Constitution are null and void. That goes for agencies too. Everything you're going to hear tonight is going to be used under the Fair Use Act. So at a time where our enemies are lining up against us, the U.S.A. is being attacked from all different directions. We, the people, should be united. Instead, what we're seeing is the Democrat Party, Biden administration, media, and even a lot of carnival barkers on social media are playing this dangerous game. They're obstructing us from what's important. And the results could be, we could end up going from what apparently now is a Cold War with China and their allies, and they have allies. If you don't think so, go back and watch our brick theories, brick deceptions. So we could lose our way of life. Our country could be destroyed. In part one here, we're going to show how what this whole deep state thing is, how it was exposed, and now it needs to be abolished. And we're going to present to you a history of abuse, some that many of you are totally unaware of, but you need to understand. If we don't return to our founders' vision, their very principles of freedom and liberty, from a government designed to limit the power of government, the USA and the Western experiment will be dead. And we'll go back to like we start out every night. In our shows, we tell you, being ruled by kings, queens, tsars, emperors, dictators, pick your word of choice. Tonight, we're going to start off here with a clip from with Devin Nunes. You may remember him.
Your assessment of the Durham report.
I think overall, this is a really sad day for America, because what it represents is the total collapse of the justice system. A lot of people see this as, oh, FBI, intelligence agencies. No, no, no. This represents the entire collapse of the justice system. And it really, the Durham report reads like the tombstone for the justice system.
So this was an election year. You've got one campaign paying for dirt on another campaign, and you've got the amazing intelligence agencies of our government weaponized. So that's what has taken place here. You're saying you knew nothing about it? You were President Obama's right hand. And a lot of people wonder how much President Obama directed this. So I ask you, did President Obama direct any of this?
That's not how it works. That's not how our investigations work. That we leave that to the intelligence community to bring forward information.
That was former President Obama advisor Valerie Jarrett with me back in 2020 when I pressed her about what President Obama knew about the Trump-Russia probe, which, according to special counsel John Durham, was seriously flawed, and there was no basis or evidence to launch such an investigation. Something my next guest, Devin Nunes, told us back in February of 2018, 5 years ago. He broke that news here on this program, that the entire Trump-Russia collusion pushed by Democrats, the DOJ, the FBI, and the mainstream media was a made-up story. Now we are learning from the Durham report that the FBI appeared to have made no effort at all in investigating Bill and Hillary Clinton over claims that individuals and foreign countries were attempting to buy influence through donations to the Clinton Foundation and Hillary's 2016 presidential campaign. Joining me right now with reaction is the truth teller. This bombshell is going to be here, our topic, for former House Intelligence Committee Chairman, current Trump Media CEO, Devin Nunes. Devin, great to see you. Thanks very much for being here.
Great to be with you, Maria.
Your assessment of the Durham report.
I think overall, this is a really sad day for America because what it represents is the total collapse of the justice system. A lot of people see this as, oh, FBI, intelligence agencies. No, no, no. This represents the entire collapse of the justice system. And it really, the Durham report reads like the tombstone for the justice system. And it would say something simple like, here lies the justice system, the Justice Department, and we knew there was criminality and we couldn't do anything about it. That's really what the Durham report says. There's a lot of great information in there, but nothing's been done.
Well, why? I mean, why is there no accountability after all of these years? You knew it from day one. You came out with the Nunes report back in 2018 and walked us through how this was a made-up story from the Clinton campaign, and yet look at where they are now. All of these people who were complicit in pushing this lie, whether it's Peter Strzok, John Brennan, James Comey, they've got big jobs at universities and they're writing books and they're on MSNBC and CNN as national security experts.
Yeah, so the way you have to look at this, it's even bigger than that and all of those bad, evil characters. What this is really about, it's about the Justice Department collapsing. It's also about the judicial branch of government collapsing and the fake news media collapsing. Now, look, Maria, a lot of this we talked about on your show for the last 6 years. Your viewers understand that. But I think you have to take a global view of what the repercussions really are here. Because, you know, the judicial branch, I just mentioned the justice system, how that's completely broke down. I mean, they knew about it, couldn't do anything about it. But how about the judges? Let's just take, there's 3 easy examples with the judges. You had the FISA court. They did absolutely nothing. The FISA court could have stepped in. They knew right away when I knew. They knew in 2017. And then for sure they knew in 18 when we notified them. Did they do anything? No, they covered it up. You also had the activity of federal judges as it related to General Flynn. Then fast forward and you got the Mar-a-Lago raid where you have a judge sign a FISA warrant or a search warrant.
Yeah, great point. Former House Intelligence Committee Chairman Devin Nunes.
Take a quick look at what Nunes said right there. How foreign countries are buying influence in our nation. Now, if they're just buying influence to make a few dollars, that's something different. That's been happening through the years. There's been a lot of lobbying in that degree. But what we're seeing is they're buying influence, like the Chinese and their allies, to take our country down. To do that, they have to attack our whole system of government, which is why I hold this up all the time, because this is what we need to protect. This provides checks and balances between 3 branches of government. So when Nunes says that looking at the collapse of the justice system, that we're not just looking at the collapse of the justice system, we're looking at this collapse of the whole system. You have Congress trying to hold people accountable, as you'll see, and other people obstructing them. Then you have a judicial system that sometimes doesn't care to look into the real issues. But what you end up there with is a rogue executive branch, which is supposed to be kept in check by the other 2. These agencies are a product of the executive branch, the DOJ, the FBI, the CIA, Homeland Security, the board, everything. It's all included in the executive branch. I mean, there's no accountability for any of their actions and no checks and balances. There's no liberty. There's no freedom. Congress can be as outraged as they want. What good does outrage do? Whistleblowers come forward. They've been assaulted. You'll see more on that in the next segment. What's happening is all this corruption has come from how all these agencies in the executive branch have amassed more power. Let's watch this next segment now. Let's see if it's unchecked power is new to intelligence agencies in the executive branch.
Going through the impact of what took place in 2016 and 17 with the Trump-Russia investigation and the collusion lie. Your thoughts on the fact that the FBI also completely ignored any claims that Hillary Clinton was accepting money and influence peddling, the way Joe Biden has been doing as well. So not only did they pursue these FISA warrants against Trump officials, they were ignoring anything regarding Hillary Clinton, right?
Exactly. And that's why most Americans are saying, how can this happen? How can this happen in the United States of America? Now, as you know, I spent a lot of time abroad. I made a lot of friends overseas. And I have gotten so many calls after this Durham report from people who are saying, what in the hell is going on in the United States? How can you guys have a justice system like this? I think a lot of people were shocked. A lot of them knew me. A lot of them knew that I was telling the truth. But when you see Durham go through this exhaustive 3-year process and actually come forth with all of this information, that in any normal world, there were so many crimes committed here. And remember, don't forget that you had Obama. You asked me, what did Obama know about this? Well, this was a stunt by the Hillary Clinton campaign in 2016. It failed miserably because Donald Trump won overwhelmingly. Right. Then what happened? Obama was directly involved because he's the one that went back right after the election in 2016. He got all the intelligence agencies involved, and they leaked out to the fake news media that, oh, the Russians must have done something and they were trying to help Trump. Obama did that, but Obama knew. We now know from Durham, Obama knew and his team knew in August of 16 that this was a dirty trick by the Hillary Clinton campaign.
Unbelievable.
So yeah. I think the question is, where do we go from here? That's the real question.
Yeah.
Right?
Where do we go?
One thing we at least have is our voice, and that's what we can do to spread that word. But I think the Congress is going to have to dive deep into this.
Yes, for sure.
So instead of using a SWAT team, if a suspect is being cooperative, and in your testimony and in your experience as an FBI agent and a law enforcement officer, it's not necessary to use a SWAT team to go in with guns ablazing and pulled out and going after an individual when that individual is cooperating. And wasn't that part of your testimony?
That's part of my testimony. It's part of what I brought forward in my whistleblower disclosure.
And that's in your experience as how many violent criminals have you arrested?
I've arrested over 150, and I have 5 years of SWAT experience.
And you didn't have to use, there wasn't necessity in some of those circumstances to use SWAT team because the individual was cooperating?
Never a single time.
And in your testimony, the individual that you were referring to that a SWAT team should not have been used on but was being used on for political purposes was somebody that was cooperating, correct?
Yes.
I want to thank you for standing up for the Constitution, for America. I commend you for standing up for American values and commend you for standing up for what you believe are huge misgrievances that are going on at the FBI. And officers like yourself who have served our country, who have served the FBI, who have served in law enforcement, suddenly want to raise concerns and use the whistleblower status to be able to, hey, this isn't right. This isn't the way that we should be treating these individuals. This isn't fair. Suddenly, the FBI is shutting you out, taking away your clearances, taking away your pay, shutting you down so that your families can't even survive financially. So I want to thank you for your testimony here today, and I hope the American people will gloss over the lies that have been perpetrated on you today for the truth that is underneath every single one of your statements. Egregious abuse, misallocation of law enforcement resources, misconduct in leadership ranks of the FBI. And I've been here 5 years, and during that period of time, Director Wray and AG Garland have both sat in desks just like that, under oath, and testified that they would not retaliate against whistleblowers. And it's my understanding, Mr. Friend, that you went through all of the required regulations at the FBI in order to raise your concerns to your supervisors. Is that correct?
Yes.
So you followed inside protocol for the FBI, utilizing whistleblower statute protection information regulations through the FBI to make your complaints and information be known.
Yes.
And you did that to your supervisors.
3 levels of supervisors.
3 levels of supervisors, and the response to that was losing your security clearance, shutting you out, losing your job, taking away your pay.
That's correct.
I'm so frustrated and angry, and I don't have only a minute and a half left to try to display the level of corruption, weaponization, politicization that has occurred at the highest levels of the FBI and the DOJ.
What I think we can say is that as the DOJ and FBI have become more political, they have amassed more power. And as they have amassed more power, they have become more political. This is a vicious cycle that must be stopped. To be blunt, the leadership of the FBI and the DOJ are corrupt. I will name names. Christopher Wray and Mary Garland are corrupt. They know it, we know it, and the American people know it.
Well, I kind of like that new rep from Wyoming, Attorney Hageman. She gets right to the point. She's not going to feed you donuts. She's going to give you a fact. She's not sugarcoating. What are we seeing? What we're seeing here, was just a dirty trick. What was pulled? Think about that. What more could it be? It's being done through intimidation tactics. They're intimidating everybody. They even intimidate members of their own agency if they don't want them. They're going to come out. SWAT teams, so they didn't have to use them once. Most people complied. It was referring to people from the Day 6 so-called attack on the Capitol, who was just there exercising the First Amendment rights. They've been attacked by everybody, including the media. He said, the more power, the more corrupt these people get. He said, Congress knows, we know. And those who don't know had better figure this out really quick. But was it just done by Hillary Clinton, the Obama administration? Because what the intelligence agency is currently doing, anything new? Well, what we did, before we get into more obstructions in our next segment, we went down and we got a clip from 1982, back when the media actually came out with some hard-hitting and investigative reporting, which is what that First Amendment was all about. And this is about Nazis in the U.S.A. Roll that and we'll talk some more after we watch a couple of segments.
Close to 200,000 Americans lost their lives fighting the Nazis in World War II, and yet hundreds of those Nazis and their collaborators eventually wound up living comfortably here in the United States, becoming U.S. citizens. How did it happen? That is the story we shall tell in The Nazi Connection, a story you have never heard till now, of how highly placed U.S. officials, despite the express orders of 2 presidents of the United States, invited Nazi collaborators, killers, to these shores to trade what they knew about the Soviet Union for sanctuary here.
Several hundred Nazi collaborators from Eastern Europe and Russia were smuggled into the United States for intelligence purposes.
Smuggled by whom?
State Department intelligence, specifically the Office of Policy Coordination. It was the first covert spy agency set up in the United States. It predated the CIA by several months.
Who is this man making these charges, and what gives him the right to say what he has just said? His name is John Loftus, and for 2 years he was a prosecutor with the Office of Special Investigations in the Department of Justice, responsible for weeding Nazis and Nazi collaborators out of the United States. His security clearance went 3 levels above top secret, but has decided that his conscience demands that he bring to light what he says remained for too long, a dark and sinister top secret.
We had one unit of the government out trying to prosecute the Nazis, and other units of the government trying to secrete the information. We later established that the files pertaining to the Nazi immigration had been withheld from Congress, from the courts, from the CIA, and from the local agents of the Immigration Service.
Didn't President Roosevelt, didn't President Truman say specifically that war criminals were not to be brought into the country?
That's absolutely true.
We asked Loftus who it was who had run the old OPC, the Office of Policy Coordination, that was responsible for bringing Nazi collaborators into the United States.
A man by the name of Frank Wisner. He was a former intelligence operator during World War II.
With the OSS?
That's correct. His boss was Alan Dulles in Germany.
The Office of Strategic Services, was it called?
Yes, it was.
Was there nobody in the State Department at a higher level who knew what was going on and okayed it? Did Frank Wisner have no boss?
There were 3 men who principally were Eisenhower's representative for Cold War affairs during the early 50s. C.D. Jackson, Undersecretary of H.E.W. Nelson Rockefeller, and Vice President Richard Nixon.
Would they have known that former Nazi war criminals were being employed by U.S. military intelligence and were being invited into the country, given U.S. citizenship, despite what they had done?
I read some classified information that indicated that a number of these programs were approved at the highest levels. And I would say that as a conservative estimate, there are more than 300 Belarusian Nazis living in America today.
Still alive, still operating, American citizens.
That's correct. Some are still working for the government.
Some are working for quasi-governmental agencies like Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty. Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty was once funded by the CIA, is that correct?
Yes.
How come?
It would have been embarrassing to admit that this was an official government function. The worst kept secret, of course, of the Cold War because the Soviets knew about it, but it was always possible to say on the diplomatic level, this is a private organization and...
Crusade for Freedom, publicly supported.
Precisely.
The Crusade for Freedom was the way most Americans learned about Radio Free Europe. Although money for it was solicited from the American people, Radio Free Europe was funded almost entirely by the CIA. Radio Free Europe broadcast the news to the Soviets and was also used to transmit secret messages behind the Iron Curtain.
Now, was that piece interesting? Because it appears, following World War II, intel agencies began taking on a life of their own. About intel agencies and here, and Alan Dulles, well, we've covered him in several shows, and DJ took a good deep dive with him last week, and it kind of proves everything that he has been saying in his shows on the Dark Journalist about Dulles, JFK assassination, and President Truman. What was this about? You know, the government intel agencies, like the CIA, were funding other operations and organizations that people were led to believe were publicly funded. That should make us wonder who's funding all the divisive groups today that are taken to the streets, and where's their support really coming from? Could they be being supported by federal agencies along with some of these other people that want to take our country down? Let's hear a little more. Let's see what extent the government would go to control the illusions that we are free people.
Did you have a man named Stanislav Stankiewicz who worked here?
Yes, he was a freelancer for a number of years with our Belarusian service.
Who was Stanislav Stankiewicz? He was a Belarusian who received secret orders from the German SS to kill every Jew in his county.
In order to save ammunition, they had the Jews lie on top of each other in 2 rows, and they shot through the bodies. The blood seeped up through the sand at the end of the day, and the ground was still quivering. So they had to post guards on top of the graves until everyone had suffocated. The worst part wasn't found out until after the war, when Soviet doctors conducted autopsies. They could find no bullet wounds on any of the infants. Apparently, the Belarusian police decided that the babies were too small to climb out of the grave, and so they wouldn't waste a bullet on them. They were buried alive.
And this was done under the command of Stanislaus Stankiewicz.
That's correct, Jim.
What happened to Stanislaus Stankiewicz?
He was recruited by American intelligence, given a good job with Radio Liberty, and became a citizen of the United States.
In 1948, in a displaced persons camp in Germany, Stankiewicz was apprehended by U.S. Army counterintelligence. After investigating his background, the U.S. Army concluded
that Stankiewicz is a security risk to the United States because he worked first for the Soviets, then for the Nazis, and then the Soviets again. And he will work for anyone who pays him.
But rather than prosecute him, U.S. military intelligence recruited Stankiewicz as an informant and as a propagandist in America's Cold War effort against the Soviets. Stankiewicz was smuggled into America, and he moved into this quiet Queens, New York neighborhood where he lived in relative obscurity for over 20 years until John Loftus began his investigation.
We had prepared a case against Stankiewicz containing his confessions, his admissions of Nazi background, and were ready to prosecute.
As a last step, the Justice Department asked their Soviet counterparts to provide some eyewitnesses for the case.
We received a cable from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in the Soviet Union that Stanislaus Stankiewicz had just died.
Well, he died in the United States?
And the Soviet government knew about it almost immediately.
The security clearance would have been done by the agency in those days. So
by CIA?
By CIA, indeed.
You had another man who worked here, Vilis Hasners?
Yes.
Did you read the record against Hasners, the witnesses who testified?
Yes. Yes, we did.
And you know that among other things, here is one thing said about Hasners. One of the witnesses testified that on another occasion in July of 1941, he saw the respondent, Hasners, and other Latvians force a number of Jews into a synagogue, which they then set on fire. Does he still work for Radio Liberty, Radio Free Europe?
I believe he still contributes, or he now again contributes, freelance programs, yes.
The Justice Department told us they had botched the case against Hasners. Mr. Hasners would not talk to us, on or off camera. But Anton Adamovich, currently a staff writer for Radio Liberty, agreed to. We read, Mr. Adamovich, some of the information the Justice Department had gathered on him. You were a propagandist for the Nazis. Then you became an informer for the U.S. Army.
Yes.
Intelligence.
Yes.
And then it was as a result of that that you were brought into the United States.
Yes. That's
okay.
Generally, that's right. Yes.
That's correct.
In
And you know that both President Roosevelt and President Truman said that Nazi collaborators
yes, I knew.
were not supposed to come into the United States.
I knew.
So that you knew that
yes.
you came into the United States illegally.
Yes, yes.
You knew that.
No, I came legally, and I told everything about my background when I was admitted to U.S.A.
To the FBI.
Yeah, of course.
And the FBI said...
And FBI said, all right, we knew this. And
we knew you were a Nazi collaborator.
Yes, and it's...
We knew that you helped
yes,
Army intelligence. We'll reward you in spite of the fact that you were a Nazi collaborator.
Yeah, that's right, that's right. We had no choice. Yes, we had... We could be only collaborates with Soviet, with Bolsheviks, which we hate. 7 years I was persecuted by Bolsheviks.
Right.
Yes. Or with these Nazis.
What? Wow. So what kind of people are these people that the CIA and the FBI, the same FBI that's being questioned today about their tactics, what kind of people are they to put in the country? This guy was a Nazi propagandist, you heard at the end. propaganda was supposed to be illegal until they reorganized the Smith-Mundt Act, which made propaganda legal in the U.S. Before, it was only to be used on foreign nations. We've explained that in several of our shows. Alarming how the government, they knew who these people were. Even the people who employed these people knew who they were. One got to live out his life in a middle-class neighborhood in Queens, New York. Let's hear some more and do some soul searching, and as we raise some more questions here, and we'll wrap this segment up.
He told Tumash, who lives in this house in the Bronx, also made that choice and had his past history kept secret by U.S. intelligence services. Tumash was for 3 months the Nazi-appointed mayor of Minsk, the capital of Byelorussia during World War II. On several occasions, we tried to talk with Dr. Tumash about his reported role in recruiting the local police force, which massacred 45,000 persons. But he refused to appear on camera.
You let us into your home, and then you say you were unwilling to talk about these allegations.
I'm sorry, I cannot talk.
Off camera, he admitted he was indeed the Nazi mayor of Minsk, but he denied having anything to do with the extermination of Jews. By the late 1970s, with stories continuing to surface about Nazi war criminals in the United States, a House Congressional Committee chaired by then-Congressman Joshua Eilberg requested files on 111 alleged Nazi war criminals living in America. Among those on the list were 2 Belarusians, Franz Kushel and Emanuel Jasiuk.
In 1978, Congress specifically asked the General Accounting Office to get information on these 2 people. The General Accounting Office asked the Army about it, and they were lied to. The Army simply lied to the General Accounting Office in 1978 and said, we don't have files on these people. They had the files.
The Army sent a letter through channels to Congressman Eilberg stating that they had searched certain very specific vaults for all files pertaining to Kushel and had found no others. That information was a lie. I went down to the identical vaults and retrieved the Army intelligence files for Kushel. 1 year later, after Eilberg had been told that no such files existed.
What would be the motive of the Army to lie?
If Congress had been given either the Kushel or the Jasiuk dossiers, it would have inevitably unraveled the entire smuggling operation. The information had to be suppressed at all costs.
All we're asking the FBI with respect to the Form 1023 is, what did you do to investigate this allegation? But they won't answer our questions.
In fact, it appears the FBI is being, less than helpful, if not obscuring the congressional, obstructing the congressional investigation.
In 1978, the Congress was finally trying to get to the bottom of the Nazi connection. On behalf of Congress, John Tipton, a GAO investigator, requested all intelligence files on alleged Nazis living in America. After a careful review, he wrote this report for the GAO entitled Widespread Conspiracy to Obstruct Probes of Alleged Nazi War Criminals Not Supported by Available Evidence. But now Tipton says that apparently he didn't get all the available evidence. We then showed Mr. Tipton a note that had been inserted into the file he requested. Defense material not cleared for review by GAO. Do not disclose to GAO until notified to do so.
So the Department of Defense was covering up material that the Congress asked for concerning Nazi war criminals and their admission into the United States.
Unless there's another reason for it.
We then read to Mr. Tipton from the FBI file on Emanuel Jasiuk, another file he had been told did not exist.
Subject, name of the man that we're talking about, who was allegedly a war criminal and caused deaths of people in Poland, now resides, gives his address, Passaic, New Jersey. Were you informed about all that when you asked about that in 1978?
I was not aware of that aspect of it.
That information was in the hands not just of the Defense Department, but of the FBI at the time you asked for it.
It appears to be that way. That, I think, is the first time I've seen that document.
And there can be little doubt from this document and from Defense Department documents that they lied to you and said they had nothing on this individual.
That seems to be the case.
So the Congress was misled back in 1978.
That's correct. From the information that John Loftus has showed to me and that you've showed me here today, I would have to say that that appeared so.
They routinely were deleting all documents showing that the government had assisted their entry. And I caught them at it. We went down and confronted the Army officials, and they said that they thought that we knew all about the sanitizing program. Apparently it's a routine procedure with them. And the procedure was established many years ago, and they were just following routine orders. And for one day, I was allowed to look through the dossiers with no deletions, and of the 10 dossiers I looked at, 3 had letters evidencing government assistance in entering the United States.
And these 3 were Belarusian war criminals.
2 were Belarusian, and the 3rd was Hans Felfer, the Soviet spy working in the German intelligence service.
Criminals are undesirables in the context of which we're speaking, still being brought in today.
The person whose file I read, there was substantial evidence that he had persecuted hundreds of thousands of civilians.
And he was brought in how recently?
Recently.
And he was brought in because?
He had been working for OPC.
Way back then?
That's correct.
Someplace along the line, I get the feeling that you got rather frustrated by your experience in Washington at the Office of Special Investigations and inside the Department of Justice.
Very much so. Did you ever try and prove a murder trial 30 years after the fact with all the witnesses behind the Iron Curtain and none of that evidence available to you? The most infuriating part was that these people had confessed over and over again to the intelligence agencies. We had all the information on their war crimes and their atrocities, and we couldn't use one piece of that material in court. It didn't comply with the rules of evidence.
Was there the desire to do the job? I mean, the fact of the matter is that this has gone on for 35 years, and nobody until this moment has had the desire to tell the story. I get the impression that nobody really wants to handle this. Why have you gone public?
Wouldn't you? No matter how long it takes us, or how well they hide, no matter how well connected they are, someday the truth is going to come out. There is no statute of limitations for mass murder. And sooner or later, someone like me or someone else will come along and find out the truth.
Wow. Wow. Was that impactful? Did you get the idea of why this was so important to play for you? So here we have cover-ups and lies. 2 congressional investigators. Congressional investigations like are going on today. And hear what he said about covering up the information at all costs. A government sanitizing program has been in effect for a long time. Yes, it has. If Congress is given the information to save our way of life, our government. So you're going to ask, who really is in this government? Who is influenced and has control over these intelligence agencies? He was saying there, he went through the evidence. He saw it. And they even confessed, and it made no difference in the court. The same court where James Comer wants to take the FBI if they don't release the documents Congress is asking for. So what does that tell us about our system and our founders and design? And their very vision. It's written right in here. Let's let this sink in. We have 2 branches of government here. As we mentioned earlier, we have the congressional branch and the judicial branch, who appear to be unable to stop the rogue executive branch agencies, completely out of control. But how long have they been out of control? Let's let this sink in too. What happened following 9/11? The Congress gave these agencies more power. And that power has led us to this dire point. Our way of government, our very way of lives, could possibly come to an end. Looks like the representative from Wyoming, Hageman, said the more power they got, the more corrupt they became. So this should force us to revisit many of the so-called theories surrounding 9/11. They were dismissed. But please, those are conspiracy theories. Because our way of government, our way of life is hanging in the balance. Even consider this. What about this war in Ukraine? We try to answer some questions to that and stir some thoughts. You can go back to see some of our shows. And we even asked the question, are we still fighting World War II with Nazis fighting communists over in the Ukraine? What is that war actually about? But actually, right now, another concern that we have to address, and address it soon, he's coming up for a vote this year. All these secret FISA courts, Section 702, they must be repealed. We could lose our government, our way of life real quickly. And it's going to be because the people are going to accept tyranny. Like Nunes said right now, we still have our voice. But 2020, when a massive display of censorship became clear out of voices in the public square, well, our voices should be silenced too. With that, we're going to move to section 2. I'm going to show you a little bit more about obstruction, everything that pertains to what you just saw here. But keep what we just showed you in mind when you view the other sections.